there is a bit of evidence out there on who was right and whether or not Ethan could possibly be embezzling this money, or at least why Keemstar would think this money was supposed to go to his legal fund.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We've got some drama going on in here between Keemstar and Ethan Klein of H3H3, and I've gone through it all, and I also think I have found a bit of evidence outside of these two people to see exactly who is right in this situation. So stay tuned for that. That'll be down towards the end. But first, I just want to say that if you are actually here looking for my show Peculiar Occurrences, it is no longer on this channel. It has moved over to its own channel, Peculiar Occurrences, and we're having a lot of fun over there talking about, well, the peculiar subjects along with true crime. So if you're into that sort of thing, go on over and subscribe to the new channel. We'll love to see you there. Now, before I get into this, I would like to say that I thought this would be good for me to cover because I can be very non-biased, because I'm not a fan of either one of these people. Therefore, I'm not going to choose one side over the other just because
they ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, and you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Therefore, I'm not going to choose one side over another just because I like one person better, because I'm not really a fan of either one of them. So, let's jump into this. Keemstar was trending on Twitter, and it turned out he was trending on Twitter because Ethan Klein had made a 46-minute, 33-second expose video on Keem. And it was a response to a Drama Alert episode that Keemstar had made on April 19th, 2020. In this episode of Drama Alert, he had done two stories on Ethan. The first one was a story that happened between Ethan and a smaller YouTuber called Some Ordinary Gamer. Now, this Some Ordinary Gamer had accused Ethan of donate shaming Jeff Bezos. In return, Ethan denied all the claims, and the smaller YouTuber backed down, made a video, and apologized for it. But in the covering of from Keem, he had actually went and found a clip from H3H3's podcast where, in fact, turns out Ethan had shamed Jeff Bezos for that very thing, donate shaming.
I never did it. And if we're talking about the coronavirus, he's right. H3H3 is right. He didn't donation shame about the coronavirus. He didn't do that. But we found an old clip of him donation shaming. Guess this. Guess who it is. Jeff Bezos! Here's the clip, roll it.
But then here's where my question comes in. Now, I'm not usually someone, money is money, donation is a donation, it's all good. But what do you make of Jeff Bezos donating $690,000?
A lot of people made the comparison of like, that's literally the equivalent of a middle-class person donating, I don't know, $69 or something. I think that
No,
was
less.
Less? Yeah, I think it was like, that was the argument.
I think it was,
He should have made that
he makes that
anonymous.
in 6 minutes.
Yeah, if you're gonna donate that little.
He makes that in 6 minutes.
Love it. That's incredible.
Well, the thing is, I have lots of rocket ships I need to shoot off.
So is that kind of a bitch move when you're
I was wondering.
Wow, okay, so when Ethan Klein says, I never donation shame Jeff Bezos, yes, you did. It was right there. But you are right in the fact that, like, in this scenario with coronavirus, no, you didn't.
Therefore, discrediting Ethan. He then went on. Sorry, I got notes. He then went on to talk about the FOPA, F-O-P-A, Dopa Fund that Ethan and his wife had set up in order to get people to donate money to them so that they could fund their legal battle that they had between another YouTuber over copyright claims. It was actually a very famous battle. A lot of you probably heard of. I know I did. Though I'm not a fan of either one, you can't be on YouTube. At least I don't think you can be on YouTube and not know who these people are. I will say every once in a while I might hate watch them both. I do kind of like Ethan's wife. I don't like Ethan. I don't like Keemstar. I'm not a fan of their personalities in general. But I digress. The Dopa Fund was set up for people to donate, and a lot of YouTubers did, because this was a very substantial lawsuit over whether or not, people would get in trouble over fair use and to protect the freedom of speech. So a lot of people donated to this fund. And Keemstar was talking about how in the beginning, so many people had donated that H3H3 had came out and actually said that, this is a lot of money. They're probably not going to use it all for their lawsuit. And they actually wanted to leave the Dopa Fund open for others to use if they're ever sued over copyright claims or fair use. And then by the end of it, Ethan ended up retracting that statement on Twitter, saying that the lawsuit actually cost a lot more than they thought it would end up costing, and he ended up having to use $15,000 of his own money to pay for the lawsuit. And of course, Keemstar claimed Ethan lied. He said that a game called Payday 2 had made a DLC exclusively for H3H3, saying that they were going to donate all of the money for the legal funds to help H3H3 in their legal battle. Keem also went on to point out that this game, Payday 2, which is a very large game, that it's everywhere. It's on PS2, it's on Xbox One, I believe Xbox 360, Steam, that this game is everywhere. And at the very least, if like 75,000 people bought the DLC for $5 a pop, he would have made at least $200,000. But it's possible he could have made up to $1 million. Okay, now let's jump to H3H3's video. In response, H3H3, Ethan Klein, his wife wasn't in the video at all, but Ethan Klein made a 46-minute video. It was like a documentary style video. He made it looked like he was parodying like the Nature Channel or Discovery. He even went on to call Keem things like Hamilius Reptilius. He said he's never met a Slytherin until he met Keem, and if I can say this, Kilmus Reptilius. And he had like the nature hat. He was fighting a snake at the beginning. It was very, very cinematic. Actually kind of funny on his part with the little parody thing. But I digress. Okay. At the beginning, like I said, it was very cinematic, and he kind of showed clips here and there to try to show you the kinds of scandals he was going to be touching on of Keem's in the video before he went into the whole like real parody of the Nature Channel of it. And then he went on to touch on how these accusations from Keem are much deeper than we realize, that he's actually accusing him of felony theft of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then he sort of just leaves it hanging there, of course, saying this isn't true. And he goes on to expose Keem for many of his own scandals, which I will touch on here. One of the things he touched on was Keem telling YouTuber Total Biscuit, who is dying of cancer, that he could not wait to report on his death. There was also a pretty long segment about how he falsely accused an elderly streamer of being a pedophile, because the guy looked a lot like the guy in the news article, but it turned out to be a totally different person, different name, everything. And even though Keem came out and said, hey, we were wrong about this, I believe it was in 2016 that he came out and was like, hey, we were wrong about this. For years and years, this guy still continued to receive a lot of hate and even death threats. He also talked about Keem's past with doxing people and how his doxing has actually led to people being swatted before. And also the hypocrisy of it, since he had a person who had swatted people on his show later on and tried to play like the good guy in the situation, let the guy know, you know, what you're doing is illegal. At the same time, Keem also denies ever swatting anyone because he didn't actually do it himself. No, Keem did not actually swat anyone, but he did put out a lot of people's information, and Ethan kept replaying this little clip where he's letting out this person's information. You can hear someone in the background saying something about maybe someone will swat him, which did end up happening. Then he went through like everything with his past with Etika. And if you don't know the situation with Etika, Etika was a YouTuber that suffered from bipolar disorder, and he had thoughts of grandeur. There was a lot from him talking about how he was the Antichrist and how he controlled everything that went on in reality and how reality was like a simulation. And Keem, with his past with making fun of mental disorders, saying they're not real, saying people use depression and things of that nature to get more sympathy, because if you say you have a mental disorder, people will pay attention to you. He went in on Etika. Hey guys, this is Lois from the future. I just want to clarify that those were all claims made by Ethan as to why he went after Etika. Okay, thanks. Later to retract those statements, because Etika had went through a lot of manic attacks, had been putting videos out about how the police were coming to his house and him fighting with the police through a door and telling them that the people on the internet are sending him there. Etika ended up actually going to a mental institution, and when he got out of the mental institution, Keemstar directly had him on his show for an interview. An interview that later on ended up becoming highly criticized, because there's a part in the interview where Etika's talking about, you know, how he's the Antichrist and this is all a simulation. And Keemstar tells him, well, if this is all simulation and none of it really matters, then why not just jump off a cliff and kill yourself? 51 days later, Etika jumped off of a bridge and killed himself. Yeah. Immediately after that, Keemstar was putting out tweets and such, saying that, you know, rest in peace my homie, and that he was grieving his homie, and everybody jumped down his throat about these interviews. And he started telling the public that there was a lot they didn't know from behind the scenes, and because of those interviews, him and Etika had actually become friends. He even went out, I believe I remember something about him going out and donating some money to his family for the funeral and going down to the funeral. Hey guys, it's me from the future again. I also want to just add in at this point that Etika's family, mother and girlfriend that is, did end up coming out in defense of Keem and talking about how Etika was a huge supporter of Keem, and that did not blame what Etika did to himself, chose to do to himself on Keem. I'd also like to state that I do think that Ethan using using Etika to go after Keem is totally disgusting and was uncalled for. Okay, thanks. Bye. Back to the video. And since I'm trying to be non-biased, I will say on Twitter, just because this kind of reminds me of this, on Twitter, the son of Angry Grandpa, if you all remember him, the son of Angry Grandpa, who passed away a few years ago, actually made a video in Keem's defense saying that when his father died, that Keem was one of the first people to reach out to him behind the scenes. And that he was telling him he wasn't going to go to his own father's funeral because he wasn't mentally prepared for that. So Keem actually got onto a plane and flew down there and went to Angry Grandpa's funeral just because he knew that would get him to go. Because he was telling him, man, if you don't go, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. So I will put that in there. There are many things we may not know that went on behind the scenes, but from the outside, that's the way it looked with the Etika situation. Ethan also went on to touch a little bit on Keem's harassment of Fuzi. I may not say this right. FuziTube, who is another YouTuber who had bipolar disorder, and on camera yelled that the way Keemstar treated him made him want to kill himself. But Ethan didn't really go any further into that besides that. He finally gets into his own drama. And he starts showing all these text messages from like 5 years ago on Twitter where Keem keeps constantly reaching out, DMing Ethan, trying to get statements about different situations so he can put on drama alert, this, that, and another. It makes it does look a lot like Keem's constantly harassing him, and Ethan's not saying anything back to him for like 5 years. Then Ethan goes on to talk to a man named Almir Lesto. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce that right. Almir Lesto, who is a global branding director with Starbreeze Studios. That would be the studios who made Payday 2. And he says this is the guy who brokered the deal with Payday 2. Ethan asked him if Keem ever reached out to him to find out if this was in fact supposed to be going to the Dopa Fund, and Almir said that no, he never reached out to him. And he goes on to ask him if he has in fact embezzled all this money, and Almir said no, the money was meant for H3H3. He thanked him and was like, see, I didn't embezzle any money. And that was about the end of that little segment. Now, my thoughts on the matter, honestly, from both sides, I think with Keem's video, the only reason he talked about the Jeff Bezos story was to discredit Ethan before going into the story about him potentially stealing all this money. On the other side, I also believe that's what Ethan's entire video is an entire video to discredit Keemstar before he talked about his own dramas. Now, I looked a little bit further into this, and there is a bit of evidence out there on who was right and whether or not Ethan could possibly be embezzling this money, or at least why Keemstar would think this money was supposed to go to his legal fund. So, I looked it up on Google on what this money exactly was supposed to go to. A very easy Google search, which led me to the Payday 2 fandom Wiki page, where it actually talks about the DLC on this page. And if I remember, I'll try to put the link to that down below. But it actually states that, I got it written down here, the DLC rights are owned by H3H3 and not Overkill, which is unusual. And the intent was, in fact, meant to be to go towards and finance their legal battle. in order to preserve the right of freedom of speech. It says it right there, and I'll throw a clip of that up. It says it right there on the Wiki page that in fact is what it was going to be about. But we got to think about this logically as well. If they own the rights, that means they own the rights for ever. We don't know what's in the actual contract. We don't know if they were supposed to start receiving the money for themselves once the legal battle is over, because I'm assuming people could probably still buy that, and these sales are going to keep going on until, you know, people just didn't want to buy it anymore. So we don't know what exactly is in the contract, whether or not, you know, once these legal fees were paid off, if H3H3 was supposed to profit off of it. And that's the sort of proof that, quite frankly, Ethan needs to present. He needs to talk about exactly what's in that contract. That's really the only way to prove whether or not the public was lied to. Because, I mean, obviously, if he's getting the money and that's what's on the Wiki page and that's how it was advertised, then yeah, H3H3 and that company lied to the public and said this is for legal matters. They didn't let people know that once these legal matters were paid for, that money would no longer be going into this fund that H3H3 said people could tap into if they needed legal help. It started going to them, the family, the company, H3H3, Ethan and his wife. That would be something they did not disclose to the public. So, as much as I hate to say this, because I'm not a big fan of Keem, he might actually be right on this one. I'm just saying. Or at least halfway right in the fact that even if he's not stealing the money, they did make the public believe that this money was just for the legal battles. And I could see a lot of people assuming that this money should have started going into that fund once their legal battle was paid for. And that, my friends, is everything I found on the matter. But I want to know what you think about this whole drama down below. I want to hear your opinions on this whole H3H3 Keemstar matter. And as well, as I said, if you would like to go over and subscribe to my new channel, Peculiar Occurrences. Also, don't forget to subscribe here, like this video, please share it out everywhere, and I will see my lovelies next time. Love you guys. Peace.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah.